Alex said, my parents are here. This is a really cool thing. If you don't know who I am, my name's Nick. I had the opportunity to play college golf here, and in the spring this year, I actually kind of became a public address announcer at Jessup. So I've been on a microphone a lot this year, to the point where, like, when I speak, I feel like I'm almost too unfiltered. But it's really cool for me because this is the first time I've actually ever had my parents in the crowd. It's a really cool moment. So with that kind of that theme, athletics has been my life, my entire life, and I'm going to be talking about the identity crisis in college athletics. There's a core problem taking place in college athletics right now, and it's a mental health issue, or a presumed mental health issue. And it's showing that athletes right now are showing anxiety, depression, and burnout. And I just thought, like, well, what am I going to talk about for the senior capstone? Obviously, I want to do something in athletics because that's been my role. And I started to think about issues in my life, and I had this realization that when I became a believer 3 years ago, I got baptized February 3 years ago. I had a realization that my identity was tied to my performance. And I started to look at these mental health tests, and I had this thought, like, man, we need to build a solution that creates a support structure and a system that's foundational for athletes and people in general, because you have to think about it. Athletes are going to go into the real world after their college careers. Kind of getting into that though a little bit, my definition of leadership. This is stolen from two individuals, David Timms, who's obviously here at Jessup, and then Brad Bell, he's the lead pastor of a Well Community Church in Fresno. I kind of took two definitions and I put them together, and it's helping transform people into the best versions of themselves by walking out this messy life together. Life's messy, we're messy, sinful individuals, and leaders in my life have walked with me through that process and taken me and helped trying to transform me into the best version of myself. And it's important to acknowledge, like I said, life is messy. The three critical theories that I kind of reference in my solution to the problem that I'm going to pose: servant leadership, transformational leadership, and relational leadership. We've seen this verse come up a couple times today, Mark 10:45. Funny enough, I speak at a lot of FCA huddles, and I found out when I was prepping this morning that I actually quoted wrong in my brain, because it's for even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. I had this flipped. But still, such a critical verse because we got to see what Jesus did in serving. Transformational leadership. This is a quote from Henry Nouwen's book, In the Name of Jesus. It's probably my favorite book I read as an undergrad student. And it's Christian leaders cannot simply be persons who have well-informed opinions about the burning issues of our time. I feel like there's a lot of times as leaders, if we just have opinions about the issue but don't actually do anything about the issues, are we really leaders? And this is a quote from Leonard Sweet that kind of feel like just encapsulates relational leadership. And it's the essence of leadership is relationship, influence people to achieve things together that can't be achieved alone. So what is identity? I talked about how I'm talking about an identity crisis, but I've also mentioned mental health. The first question most individuals ask when they meet someone is, what do you do? Jessica, what do you do?
I play golf. I like to ski.
Steve, what do you do?
I'm a pastor.
Notice two things there. They both kind of shared their occupation, what they do. Okay? If you ask any other college athlete, they're probably going to say, Daniel, what do you do?
Play college golf.
Point proven. Athletes answer that question by sharing that they're athletes. Okay? Well, that is a common theme that means, hey, look, identity. And so why this matters? The NCAA did studies in 2021, and it gave this 30 to 35% of athletes came out of these studies, they reported depression. The reality of being a college athlete is there's constant evaluation. There's fear of failure, pressure to maintain image, and then if you're like me, and you have to transition out of your sport because you graduated, you panic and overwhelm a grad assistant program, or a grad school program, sports management, take grad assistant jobs, so you can't leave sports because you don't know what your life's like without sports. But you think about that, right? And it leads to this constant question of identity equals performance. And performance is unstable. Performance-based identity, James Marcia has this topic, and it's called identity foreclosure. It came about in the 1960s, right? And we kind of already touched on it in a sense just by talking to the room and seeing what the room has to say, right? Athletes commit to a role early, especially early on in my career. All I wanted to do, I had these big dreams of playing the PGA Tour, win majors, and do all these great things, okay? And so because of that, right, those things didn't take place. Not that I didn't love my time at Jessup. If I was actually going to fulfill those goals, I probably wouldn't have been playing college golf at Jessup. And so it led to these questions, which these were all common thoughts that I had to take care of in my personal life. Like, hey, if my success equals my worth, and I failed, what's my identity? What's my purpose? What if I do, like, not succeed, which I didn't succeed, and I had to wrestle with that thought. And it leads to the biblical principle, right, where we have God created us in Genesis 1, talks about how he created mankind in his own image, right? And then the Apostle Paul tells us in 2 Corinthians later on in the New Testament that, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come, the old has gone, the new is here, right? So these things are really important because we take it and we bring both those principles back to leadership, and we bring it back to leadership failures in sports. I think right now college athletics is in a very weird and particular, like, not a good time. It's in a very much a growing time because there's a lot of money involved. The word name, image, and likeness, NIL, has been thrown around a lot. And millions of dollars can be put into this organization or put into this, this world of athletics. And we have to figure out, like, nobody knows what to do. So we haven't figured that out yet. And so what it's doing is prioritizing a system that it's built on performance, winning, output, which means we're forgetting, like, three most important things: the individual, their identity, what their purpose is, and what their wholeness is. And that kind of leads into the solution that I want to talk about a little bit: rooted. So rooted, if you're familiar with a church, there's a church in Dallas, Texas, by the name of Watermark Church, and they started a 12-step program called Regen. And Regen is a 12-step discipleship program. It's a recovery program disguised as a discipleship program, is what it really is. And it takes root problems and it turns them, and it's a year-long process minimum to actually go through the curriculum process. And churches can actually come in and teach that curriculum at their church. It was something that when I was in Fresno, I always wanted to do because the Well Church had that, and that's what sparked my interest. The issue was, as a college athlete, I didn't have a year to spend in a discipleship group, which would have been really cool. But it's a process that takes place every single week. In your meeting, you end up with a cohort. And so because of that, I realized the solution to this is you need to be able to build something similar to that, but built for athletes. And that's where Rooted comes in. It's an identity formation process. It's going to help college athletes build a foundation stronger than performance, right? Athletes are taught to define themselves by results, play time, and statistics, and that creates the instability I've continually talked about. And Root is going to shift that identity from performance into purpose. It's got 5 phases, and we're going to kind of talk through each of those phases. Basically, internal awareness, breakdown, rebuilding, living it out, leadership. Basically taking similar process to Regen, we're taking this and we're making it, like, shorter, but also more simplified for an athlete. So going into the phase 1, internal awareness. The goal here is to identify who you currently are as an individual. As we kind of talked about, a lot of athletes are going to know this already. They're going to know that they are an athlete, but they need to understand the difference between their identity and their role, because those are two very different things. As a college athlete, you hear the word role player versus you think about that, okay, he has a role, he has a purpose, okay? There's a reason why there's 11 positions on a football field, 5 positions on a basketball court. Each person in that room or on that court or on that field has a role, has a purpose, okay? And that's the same in life. And so this first phase is all about self-awareness and trying to figure out what that looks like. And so some of the key questions, some of the activities, some journaling exercises, these are some of the key questions that I feel like are really hard-hitting and really hard to deal with as an athlete. Who am I without my sport? Daniel, what are you without golf?
Christian.
Good answer. See, he didn't need root. That's the thing. If you weren't a believer and you had to go through that process, man, that'd be really difficult. Like, what would you ask yourself? And I know as a fact, because I was not a believer in my first few years of college athletics, that was something that I stressed out about heavily and very, very often. Phase 2 is a breakdown phase. This has my favorite step in the entire group process. I haven't brought up the full curriculum. This is something I'll get to that a little bit later. But the breakdown phase is going to expose those false identities. So we're going to kind of take that internal awareness and then we're going to break it down and look at those unhealthy patterns that each individual has in their life. And I say this is my favorite one because it has it'll have the step that I love the most, which is taking inventory. Taking inventory is a step that actually takes place in that region process. And I love it because it actually tells you to go in and find out why you do what you do, and then go further. Why do you do what you do, and why do you do that? Okay, because you have to look at the root, right? And that's why I'm naming this program Rooted, because these key concepts of fear, failure, comparison culture, and having this external validation, you end up in this trap. And the reality of that is you have to sit and wonder why. I know for me personally, I always had this big belief of winning big majors and playing on the PGA Tour and doing these things, not just because I thought they were cool, but because I realized as a single child growing up, I had to go out exterior and make friends, and I wanted to impress those people. People pleasing is something I struggle with. I still struggle with it today. And so because of that, this phase is probably my favorite because I relate to it the most, because it forces me to have to break that down. Phase 3 is a rebuilding phase, so you can't break people down without building them back up. It's a very, this is a very fun phase because you're gonna walk with somebody in this step. And this is like almost a discipleship step where a mentor's gonna walk with you and say, hey, look, we have this information. We have these things. Now let's build daily habits. Do these things that we can do that allow us to take what we actually learned and change our belief system. And take it, because you can't technically change a person's mind. You can only guide them. You can lead a horse to water. You're not going to make him drink, right? So all you can do is present them this and walk them with this step, which goes back to my leadership definition of walking out this messy life together. Everybody in this room is a messy, sinful person, and so because of that, having the opportunity to break them down and then build them back up and shape them into the best version of themselves is so critical. Phase 4 goes into the athlete living it out. This is more like any discipleship, any mentor, student mentor type of situation where you're just going to be there. A mentor will be there with you to live out this step, and you're going to go out there and you're going to live with this new identity. It's something that I actually got to do a little bit when I became a believer, because I had somebody walking alongside me and sharing this principle. And you had somebody to go to when things went wrong, because I'm a passionate individual. I'm also a big thinker, and I get these big ideas, and I don't know how to prove them half the time anyways. But because of that, I needed somebody to go to. And so living it out, it would be like, I'll never forget as a believer personally, and this is a big step in my leadership journey. When I was 18 years old, there's a casino in Fresno that is 18 and up. I wasn't a believer yet. So we would go 2 or 3 times a week. I'd go 2 or 3 times a week and just play, especially in the great Fresno heat when it's 110, you can't play golf. Well, one of the things I think about in that is I had a conversation with that individual, and I say, hey, if my identity isn't in my golf score, and my identity is going to be something built on something else, can I really do that? And athletes need that person and need to be equipped to do that. And then with that in mind, phase 5 of leadership is basically, is the word leadership actually. And phase 5 is basically a principle of like, hey, now you've done this, let's try to turn this into a mentorship program. Because I really do believe the best way to create and grow something is by word of mouth. One of the things I do personally, if you know me, you know this, but I create social media content, I do a lot of media work, and I've done a lot of media work for the school. And because of that, one of the biggest things that I've learned was it's crazy how far just talking to individuals goes. And so if you can take people through this process, all these phases, and then you can say, hey, look, you can do that too. I think you're going to grow a process, and you're going to grow a cycle that's going to be very big, and it's going to grow, and it's going to help equip college athletes in this problem. This, as I kind of mentioned, this is not a one-time process. And I have, because I felt like I speak really, really fast because I speak so much now, I printed out basically a little form. You can kind of take one and pass it along. And basically, as I kind of talk through this, as you get these forms, you can see everything that I kind of talked about is in this one little sheet of paper. And one of the reasons why I want to share this form with you guys is because this process is really complicated, really crazy. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm planning on getting my master's in sports management at Baylor. I'm taking a grad assistant job there. And one of the things that I realized really quickly is that I dived into a big hole that I almost think was too big to handle for a senior capstone for an undergraduate study. And so one of my goals actually, as I go through my master's program, is to continue building on this, because I really do believe that there is something there, and there really is a issue, and I think you could honestly write a doctoral dissertation on this if you realistically wanted to. And so I feel like because of that, because I feel like my thoughts, there's so much to this process. You have that there, and I'd love to answer questions about it.
Yeah, I love the idea that you're connecting identity crisis with recovery. You know, it's sometimes not included in recovery work, but it really is. I love that you've done that, because like, yeah, we need to recover from this performance-oriented identity crisis. And I also love that you gave credit to
Region?
yeah, I love that. I mean, so many times Christians are guilty of not giving credit where credit is due.
No idea is original.
Yes,
I'm a big
and
believer in that.
I'm a big believer in that, so I just wanna commend you for your integrity to do that. You didn't just say, you know, this is my model, it's company, like, and you were really honest, it's very similar, but you contextualize it. And so I thought that was great. I understand this model is for college athletes. Would your model include those who, let's say because of injury, they can't be athletes anymore? And the reason I ask that is, I find that that's when we need this the most.
100%. I think that's the, it's funny because when I bring up the thought of like, hey, keeping this open-ended, the issue that I came across when I was trying to my original goal was I wanted to almost write a full mini curriculum of one of the phases. And I realized really quickly, it's like, wow, there's a lot more to this than I actually realized. And I know for me, when I needed it the most was when I wasn't actually playing my best, which is where you hit rock bottom and you have that internal awareness. So I don't know how I would exactly write that in. There was a thought that's come through my head a little bit between phase 2 and phase 3, where there's almost like a phase 1B, if that makes sense, where it's almost like a different side track that could lead people where it almost combines 1 and 2, because they hit rock bottom. They don't need to be told they hit rock bottom, and you kind of just start working with it from there.
Yeah, the reason I ask is I find that like with my son in high school sports, he got injured, and there was nothing for him. Once he was an athlete, like all the resources, school, none of that was available to him. And I just think that is when like in high school athletes too, need it then the most.
Well, and it's weird because I had the thought, I kind of made the joke in there. It's like, man, what do I do next year? And I was like, you know what, I don't know. Well, all right, let's enroll in a master's program because that buys me time because I don't know. And I knew I wanted to stay in the world of college athletics, or I wanted to be around the world of athletes and athletics because that's what I know, that's what I've always enjoyed. And it's that kind of that same principle. Like I've transitioned out of playing my sport. I'm no longer a college golfer. I'm a former college golfer. Got to change the Instagram bio and just say I'm graduate of Jessup type thing. And so I had these moments in there where I was like, man, I need a framework for this just as much as the person I'm sharing it. Which I think great solutions or great products come from people having a problem and creating a solution to that problem.
Yeah, just well done. I think since this is Christ-centered, you might even consider working with churches with their student athletes, high school through college, and helping them have a Christ-centered identity. That's an avenue too for you. Yeah, great job.
Thank you.
Can I, show this to my.
Yeah, go for it.
My cousin plays the sport and she's.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think I have extras. I printed out 25 because I wasn't sure who was going to be here or how many people would be here. So
So you created all those phase graphics? that
Yeah,
were-
so I use that mixtured with AI, trying to create like different, like, hey, give me this, like
Yeah.
like that, and then I really like the original logo, which you would remember from the trial run of this.
Yeah.
I did not like, and I wanted it to be something that actually stemmed. Like it's, you know, we're trying to fix the root issue, right?
Yeah.
And so let's put roots in this, like let's put roots in the logo, because it makes sense. We gotta go deep, we gotta go down under, and look deeper in our lives.
It's really compelling, I love it, I love the graphics and how you've distilled down the key points and stuff, so. All I have to say is like, go do it, man, you've got a vision, you've got clear research that is really compelling and convincing, and, you know, the world is in need of good stuff like this, so, outstanding. Other questions, comments for Nick?
That's it.
How many pieces of gum was consumed in the process of the?
So I was, if you notice, I went on a little gum run today. You know, you put something in front of me. I talk about people pleasing being my issue. Lack of self-control is the other thing I really struggle with. And so, not a ton of gum. That was actually probably the only time I chewed gum in the process of this, believe it or not. So I made up for the whole project right now. A lot of Diet Coke, a lot of Coke Zero. Although I'm trying to burn up all the Shack dollars from the semester, so I've been drinking. I bought out Phillips Pepsi supply. So
That's awesome. Anybody else? So proud of you, Nick. We'll let you off the hook.